Howdy, howdy. My name is Siosi Samuels. I am the community manager of Hub Melbourne, a co-working space here in Melbourne, Australia by day, and by night I'm a creative entrepreneur and coach. My dad is Fijian Indian. My mother is Tuvaluan Samoan. I was born in Suva, Fiji, and at the age of 2 became an Australian citizen because my family migrated to Australia. By the age of 8, family then moved again to Bangladesh, which was back then meant to be an only 2-year stint. Ended up being 10. Went to an American international school there called AISD, so American International School, Dhaka. Then I graduated and then came back to Melbourne, Australia to do my undergrad and postgrad here. So currently working on, of course, as a community manager at Hub Melbourne, where TCKs are around me all the time, actually, because we've got a lot of nomads and people traveling in and out. Hub, for those of you who aren't familiar with Hub, it is a co-working space. It's part of a chain of co-working spaces around the world, part of the Impact Hub network. And Hub Australia involves Hub Melbourne, Hub Sydney, and Hub Adelaide. So for people who aren't familiar with co-working spaces, it stands for collaborative working spaces, and it is part of the future of work. Other things I'm working on include an animated series based on the myths and legends of Nanumea Tuvalu, which is my maternal homeland, so my mom's mom, my grandmother. And Tuvalu is actually currently at risk of sinking due to rising ocean levels, if you haven't heard about Tuvalu. I'm also working on an online blog and coaching for creative entrepreneurs. And I am actually going to be taking a sabbatical with my wife before I move on to my next venture, as I'll be finishing up with Hub very soon. It's sad, but it's also a time for change and spreading of wings. So what got me excited about this month's topic, which is the future of work, is the fact that it's all my workplace actually talked about when I joined. And co-working spaces has actually been at the forefront of the whole future of work movement. With the sharing economy, which has also been attached to talks about the future of work, this is something that relates to some of the animations that I'm doing as well. That has to do with dying indigenous myths and legends. And in a lot of the old stories, the elders have been talking about over the last couple of decades, and probably longer than that, about the importance of sharing and changing the ways of the West so that it involves more collaboration. And co-working spaces stand for collaborative working spaces, and it's all about collaboration. It seems now that because those cultures like corporations or institutions or companies or even governments who are afraid to open up, share, and collaborate aren't actually going to last anymore. And it's very interesting to see that globally this is happening everywhere, that dictatorships and rigidnesses no longer has a place in the new world that's coming out. You can tie this to 2012, even about the rise of the feminine or the Aquarian age, whatever it is you want to call it. But there's definitely been a shift in how we operate and how we relate to one another. And I believe that TCKs are really going to thrive in this next new world, because we've had to collaborate to survive, because many of us have been in countries that aren't ours, and we've had to learn how to work with other people of different cultures, religions, faiths, to thrive. What I feel Third Culture Kid means is the next evolution in a truly global citizenship or global citizen of the world. Feeling at home anywhere in the world. So regardless of where I am, as long as I'm meeting good people or I'm with good people, and I feel at home with them, then it won't matter wherever I am. I do identify with being a TCK, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. The main reason why I feel like I am a TCK is because of my mixed upbringing, with the Fijian Indian father and Tuvaluan Samoan mother, and having just moved around a lot. Went through the whole identity crisis thing growing up, but I definitely am proud to be a TCK. The future of work. So a colleague of mine at Hub Australia actually showed me a map of someone who was looking into the future about 20, 30 years time, and what the city landscape would actually look like with co-working spaces in them. The interesting thing about that map was that it looked very similar to what I had growing up in Dhaka, Bangladesh. It was a very small, tight-knit community of expatriates. So we had the school, that was pretty much the center of our day-to-day lives. And then there were just three main suburbs around that. And so it literally took me 3 minutes to get from my house by car to the school. Looking back, I realized just how great that was. We've got, like, especially here in Australia, it takes me an hour by train to get into the city. That's a lot of time wasted, I feel. Granted, I have a laptop, so I can get some work done on the train. Yay for the internet and technology. It doesn't beat like being able to live 3 minutes away from the place that you're going to be working from or going to school. What I see for the future of work is that everything that you need is going to go back to like the mini tribes, and everything you need will be in vicinity. Especially when it comes to work, co-working spaces are a great setup, because what they can do is provide a base for different businesses to have their employees work out of, without necessarily needing to actually fork out a dedicated building just for their workers. This was echoed in the startup world in terms of how the sharing economy is starting to get a lot more people out of their comfort zones, and having these big corporate armadas driven out, or at least given a good run for their money by smaller fleets of startups. So now you're seeing a lot more lean startups actually competing with corporates on a large scale, and I think that's a good thing. I got three main things. One, a TCK mindset can help people get out of their comfort zones. So if you take a look at a corporation where you got lots of employees and culture is kind of already set, not a bad thing, but a TCK would be able to, they still have an open mindset to be able to go out and explore new things, explore new cultures, get out of your comfort zone. The other thing, number two, would probably be experience different cultures. So this can be something as simple as going from Australia to Japan. That's an easy one. Getting out of your comfort zone, and you're also getting to experience a different culture globally. Another way to experience a different culture without having to travel to another country is by corporates going to startups and talking to startups, or being around where startups hang out as well. Seeing this at co-working spaces hasn't always succeeded, because we've found that a lot of the times corporates just bring the same corporate mindset into a startup environment. If you're going to Japan and you have to take your shoes off, you do that. So it's important that those things are reciprocated. Granted, right? If a startup went to a corporate environment, they'd kind of adopt to the corporate culture. So I think that needs to kind of happen. We always have to have an open mindset in order to be able to survive, to collaborate, and to thrive. One, understand your strengths and talents. So this is the key thing. In university, they don't teach you that networking can actually be a very powerful thing. Even though I did an undergrad in multimedia systems and a master's in animation, those two things did not help me find a job in the various fields that I've done. I've been a front-end developer, community manager, and even worked at a factory at some point in time. But how I found my jobs and my clients, even when I was freelancing, had nothing to do with it. Had everything to do with my strengths, with people side of things. Two, get involved with startups, companies, or initiatives that integrate the perspectives of different cultures. And this could even be a local company that just serves customers from diverse places. But you can see the whole cultural element playing out. Three, pay attention to the language of the people you're being interviewed by, or even the CEOs of the companies that you intend to be employed by or go work for. So, are they speaking with global open-mindedness, or is it local and closed? And local doesn't necessarily mean that they're closed-minded, but it's just stuff, very subtle things in the language that you need to be mindful and aware. Barack Obama, and then Tony Abbott of the Prime Minister of Australia. Very closed, very open. And last but not least, take a look at the example of the CV that went viral for an Airbnb job by a girl named Nina Mufflet. Now, this girl, when I read her CV, I was like, this girl's definitely a TCK. She's, traveled around a lot, looking into the different markets for Airbnb that they haven't even tapped into yet. Luckily for her, she got the job. So definitely have a look at her CV. And that's how I feel you can best communicate your experiences, by leveraging off of your strengths. I do hope you guys carry the conversation over in the comments section of this video or on the website. But if there's anything that I leave for you guys, it's that, spread the word about TCKs. If you happen to bump into somebody who says, I'm from this country, my parents from another country, but I've lived all over the place, and you kind of feel or sense that they're having identity issues, like, let them know that there is this thing called the TCK, and that, there's a bunch of TCKs out there. Now, the last thing we want to do is, self-segregate. I think the cool thing about TCKs is that we're almost subliminal. Like, we're in the background and we're working our way through all these different parts of society, whether it be high prominent positions or not prominent positions. We have the power to help change and open the minds of other people. I think that's the benefit of being a TCK. We can share that with folks. And I always feel that, I guess maybe this is my style, but I like being indirect sometimes. I like being direct when I'm talking to people, but when trying to communicate a message, it's like, Pixar films or Disney films. Like, there's a story, it's a fantastical world, right? But underneath the story, there's like all these different layers and symbols and meanings. And I like that. That's probably why I like storytelling and I like communicating. And as TCKs, we can use our creativity to be able to communicate the things that we know very naturally, but people who who don't have the opportunity or the ability to be able to live in different countries or get outside of their comfort zones, we can try to bring our experiences through, creative storytelling or any field or industry, really, music, just different ways, like indirect ways that we can kind of penetrate through the subconsciousness of people. And I think that's an exciting thing for me. So, if you'd like to connect with me, feel free to check me out on my personal blog, siosism.com. So that's siosism.com. Siosi is my Tuvaluan name for George, just so you can help you remember. And SM, or the ism at the end of that, is just for the philosophy of. So, and probably just as a final thing, I'd like to leave you with a saying from my great grandfather, Ten aloe fanatu. And in Tuvaluan, that means it will come.